Hello and welcome back. Now that we have our models, we have our schemes, let's add our buyer service. Okay, so I'll add the services folder. So source services, and then I'm going to add the buyer service, buyer.service.ts. Okay, so now in this buyer service, we are going to add a couple of methods. Okay, so maybe about 5 or 6, about 6 methods. Okay, so the first 3 methods will be to get, where then we add the method to create a buyer, and then we add the method to update. So let's add the method to get the user by email. Remember that we are going to get a buyer by email. We are going to get buyer by username. Okay, so get buyer by email. Okay, so we are using arrow function async. I'll pass in the email and it's going to be of type string, and we expect this to return a promise of type I buyer documents or null. Okay, I buyer document or null, and then right here, so we are going to pass the email into this method, and it's going to return, if it finds the buyer, it's going to return the buyer document, otherwise it's going to return null. Okay, so what we need to do here is we are going to say const buyer. Remember, it will return this equal to await. Then we use the buyer model. So buyer model dot find one. Okay, so we want to find the document where the email matches whatever email the user sends, and then here we say dot exec. Okay, right here we say dot exec. I can cast this. Okay, so remember that in the buyer model we already indexed the email. Okay, so this is just the reason why we index the email, because we are very sure we are going to search for a buyer by the email. That is why we indexed it. You can see profile picture, country is seller. They are not indexed because I'm not going to search for a buyer document by any of these properties, only by the username or the email. Okay, and then here just return buyer. Okay, so we have this method. Then we create another method. Let me just duplicate this. This will be get buyer by username. Here we are going to send the username. It's going to be of type string. Okay, so and we do the same thing right here. Okay, and you can see as well it is indexed. Okay, then another method I want to add is the method we didn't define or specify the endpoint. The method will only be used once we set up our sellers seeding, because we're going to create a function to seed, to create seed data for our seller. So we are going to use this function to get random buyers. Okay, so here I'll call this get random buyers. Okay, and then here I will just pass in the count. Okay, how many buyers do we want? And it's going to be of type number. Here is we are going to return an array. Okay, so we are going to return an array. We're not returning null. Instead, we are returning an array. This is going to be buyers. Now, let me just remove this. So to get the users or the random users, we are going to use the aggregate method. Okay, so we are going to use MongoDB's aggregate method, and in the aggregate method, we are going to pass right here a square bracket, which is an array, and then we are going to use inside these brackets, we'll use the sample operator. Okay, so there's this operator called sample, and the sample operator, the value is an object. The object takes a size, and the size value is the count. Okay, so what we have done right here is this sample operator is used to return random items from the collection, and then the sample operator, it takes the size, and the size, the value is going to be whatever count number you are specifying. So if you want to get random documents from your MongoDB collection, you can use something like this, okay? And then it's going to return an array, because aggregate always returns an array. And then we return the array right here, okay? And what I want to do is, let me export these methods. So export, I'll say buyer email, get buyer by username, get random buyer, okay? Okay, so we have these three methods. Now let us add the method that will be used to create, okay? Remember, when we send, when a user creates an account, we are going to publish a message to the user service, and then we consume the message and then use it to create a buyer. Now let us add the method that will be used to create the buyer, okay? So I'll say const create buyer async, and then here it will take the buyer data of type I buyer documents, and then this will return promise of type void, okay? We are not returning any data, okay? So at first we want to check if the buyer exists, okay? So we want to check, so const check if buyer exists. It's going to be of type I buyer documents or null. So if it does not exist, it returns null, and then here we say await. Now what method do we want to use? We are going to use this get buyer by email, okay? So call get buyer by email, and then I'll pass this buyer data dot email, okay? So here we are using this method to check if the buyer exists. If the buyer exists, we return I buyer document, otherwise we return null. But if the buyer does not already exist, so if there is no buyer, okay, in the collection, because when we want to create a buyer, we need to check if the buyer with that email already exists. So if the buyer is not already in the database, then we can create. So await buyer model dot create, and then we pass in the buyer data. Okay, here I can export this right here. Okay, so this we've created these four methods: get buyer by email, get buyer by username, get random buyers, and create buyers. I'll stop here. In the next video, we are going to create 2 additional methods.